From the earliest days of your life, you were trained to believe that explanations were a virtue. Parents demanded reasons for every mistake. Why did you do that? Teachers conditioned you to justify every answer, rewarding you only when your reasoning was acceptable. Society itself reinforced the illusion that explanations equal intelligence, honesty, and strength. But beneath this mask lies a brutal truth. Explanation is not power, it is submission. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago, watching rulers rise and fall, not because of their armies or wealth, but because of how they handled perception. The moment a ruler explained himself, he revealed weakness. Doubt seeped through his words, and doubt is blood in the water. Once you explain, you step off the throne and into the witness stand, no longer the architect of the narrative, but the defendant in someone else's trial. This is the subtle trap society built for you, to believe that respect comes from clarity, when in fact clarity kills respect. Silence, however, is armor. Refusing to explain creates tension, and tension breeds fear. Fear transforms into respect. The powerful do not justify, they declare. They do not bend, they impose. They move as if their choices are law, and the world adapts to them. Every word withheld hardens their aura. Every silence multiplies their authority. What society called weakness, your refusal to explain, Machiavelli exposed as the ultimate weapon. History is a graveyard filled with rulers who destroyed themselves with words. Take Emperor Charles V, one of the most powerful men of the 16th century. His empire stretched across Europe and the Americas, yet his downfall began not with the sword, but with the tongue. Obsessed with securing loyalty, Charles explained his wars, justified his policies, defended his choices before nobles and allies. Every letter, every speech, every justification weakened his image. His words betrayed hesitation, and hesitation in a ruler is fatal. Each explanation peeled away the aura of inevitability that should surround a sovereign. By revealing the machinery of his power, he gave his enemies the tools to dismantle it. His reign collapsed under the weight of words. Now contrast this with Queen Elizabeth I of England. She too faced conspiracies, enemies abroad, whispers questioning her legitimacy, yet her approach was the opposite. When accused, she often said nothing. When pressed, she spoke in declarations, never in explanations. Her silence was not emptiness, it was a weapon. Courtiers feared not what she said, but what she left unsaid. Rivals wondered if her silence masked strength, secret alliances, or ruthless intent. That uncertainty was more powerful than any defense she could have spoken. She became a figure of legend, commanding respect even among enemies. Machiavelli would look at these two rulers and see proof of his ruthless law. Explanations humanize and weaken. Silence mystifies and strengthens. One king drowned in words and lost his throne. One queen wrapped herself in silence and secured her crown. The lesson is eternal. Authority dies when it defends itself. Authority multiplies when it refuses to answer. This law does not live only in palaces and war councils. It stalks you in daily life. At work, a colleague questions your decision, and instead of standing firm, you spill reasons, trying to prove yourself. Each word chips away at your authority until you sound less like a leader and more like a subordinate seeking approval. In relationships, the trap is even deadlier. A partner accuses you of being distant, and you justify yourself with endless explanations. Why you were busy, why you acted differently, why you didn't intend harm. Yet, the more you talk, the less respect you gain. Friends do it to you as well. A misunderstanding arises, and rather than letting silence carry its weight, you rush to explain, to clear your image, to beg for understanding. But here is the brutal reality. No one gains respect by explaining. At best, you buy temporary relief, a fragile moment of peace, but it is always at the cost of your authority. The man who explains becomes small, fragile, and dependent on the approval of others. He lives under their judgment. Machiavelli would call it slavery disguised as virtue. But silence flips the frame. When you refuse to explain, people are forced to confront their own insecurities. They start imagining reasons, searching for hidden strength, speculating about motives. And imagination always paints you larger than life. The silent man becomes unpredictable, mysterious, untouchable. Respect does not come from satisfying curiosity. It comes from feeding it without ever answering. What you withhold is more powerful than anything you could reveal. This is the everyday battlefield where power is lost or multiplied. Every explanation you give is a step down. Every silence you hold is a step above. To master this law, you must rewire your instincts, because everything in you will scream to explain, to defend, to prove. Discipline is the blade that cuts through that impulse. The first technique is the pause. When confronted, resist the urge to fill silence. Let it stretch, let it become heavy. The one who holds silence controls the moment. The second technique is to replace justification with declarations. Do not say, "I did this because I thought it was best." That is the voice of submission. Say instead, "It is done." Those three words end the conversation. Or if you want to sharpen it further, "That is my decision." No defense, no reasoning, just authority. The third technique is selective silence. You do not need to answer every message, every accusation, every provocation. By ignoring, you elevate yourself. The one demanding answers is always beneath the one who withholds them. Finally, cultivate inevitability. Build a reputation that you are not a man who explains himself, not because you hesitate, but because you do not need to. When people expect nothing from you but authority, you've won the game. They will say, "That is just who he is." And that aura becomes stronger than any justification could ever be. Machiavelli would call this the art of weaponizing ambiguity, because mystery terrifies more than truth, and silence multiplies fear. In practice, this is how power is preserved, not by defending yourself against every attack, but by refusing to play the game of defense altogether. The greatest enemy of this law is not outside, it is inside. It is the fear of being misunderstood. That fear enslaves men more than swords, chains, or kings. It whispers that if you do not explain, people will hate you, misjudge you, turn against you. And so men talk. They reveal. They pour out excuses, drowning their own strength in desperate words. Politicians are destroyed this way. Caught in scandal, they hold long press conferences, speaking for hours in futile attempts to clean their image. But every word fuels suspicion. Leaders collapse under it, explaining, justifying, proving, until they look guilty, even if they are not. Ordinary men suffer the same fate. In an argument, he repeats, "That's not what I meant," until he sounds weak, defensive, exposed. The fear of being misunderstood is the leash that turns lions into lambs. Machiavelli saw this weakness for what it is, self-destruction. Explanation does not create clarity, it creates openings. Every detail you give is a thread that critics can pull, unraveling your strength stitch by stitch. Silence, however, closes all doors. It forces others to invent, to speculate, to fear. And here lies the paradox. What they imagine in your silence is always more powerful, more intimidating than the truth you could reveal. To master this law, you must sever the leash of fear. You must allow yourself to be misunderstood. Let them believe what they want. Let them gossip, accuse, speculate. Because while they chase shadows, you stand untouched. Respect is not built on being understood. It is built on being beyond understanding. Only when you conquer this fear will silence become your sharpest weapon. If you want to live this law, you must arm yourself with words that close doors instead of opening them. The weak man, when cornered, begins to explain. Someone asks him, "Why did you do this?" And he pleads, "Because I thought it was right. Because you misunderstood. Because I had no choice." Each sentence digs him deeper into weakness. The strategist does not play this game. He replies with iron, "It is done." 3 words that end discussion before it begins. Or he redirects the entire frame. What matters is what comes next. No justification, only authority. When someone demands, "You owe me an explanation," the strategist cuts back with finality, "I owe you nothing but results." These words don't just silence, they establish hierarchy. In daily life, practice this ruthlessness. When criticized online, do not respond. When a co-worker corners you with endless questions, slice through with, "That's not the issue on the table." When someone close demands reasons, give them none. "That's my decision." Each of these phrases builds distance, each refusal forges respect, because silence is not absence, it is dominance. The less you explain, the more others imagine. And imagination always paints you colder, stronger, more formidable than you really are. Machiavelli understood this timeless law. Explanations hand control to others, silence seizes it back. The man who explains lives in the frame of others. The man who declares writes the script himself. In power games, this is the only difference that matters. Power is never granted to those who beg to be understood. It belongs to those who rise above the noise, untouchable, unreachable, unquestionable. Explanations are chains. Every reason you give ties you to the judgment of others, shrinking you until you are nothing but a servant to their approval. Silence, on the other hand, is sovereignty. When you refuse to explain, you step outside their control. You no longer answer to them. They answer to you. The world may hate you, they may resent you, but they will respect you, because you cannot be bent, you cannot be moved. This is why legends are remembered not for what they justified, but for what they refused to reveal. Think of rulers who carved themselves into history. Their power came not from defending themselves, but from embodying inevitability. They declared, they acted, and they left silence behind them. That silence became myth, and myth is stronger than any truth. Ordinary men collapse because they talk too much, explaining until nothing is left but weakness. But the strategist chooses the colder path. He does not waste words convincing others. He does not plead to be understood. He does not kneel. Instead, he lets his silence hang heavy like a blade, pressing against those who demand answers, but will never receive them. Machiavelli's ruthless law is not meant to comfort. It is meant to harden. To explain is to shrink. To remain silent is to expand. And in that expansion lies true command, the kind of authority that outlives men and becomes legend. The law is merciless, but it is the only path to true command. Never explain yourself. Those who obey it walk untouchable. Those who break it are devoured by their own words. History has proven it. Emperors who justified themselves crumbled, while queens who withheld multiplied their power. You felt it in your own life too. Every time you explained, you lost something: respect, authority, presence. But every time you held your tongue, every time you let silence linger, the atmosphere changed. People shifted. They questioned themselves instead of questioning you. And in that moment you saw a glimpse of Machiavelli's law at work. Respect is not granted to those who beg for understanding. It is seized by those who command without apology. If you want to step into that position, discipline must be your weapon. Kill the instinct to explain. Kill the fear of being misunderstood. Replace excuses with declarations. Replace justification with silence. Let others drown in speculation while you stand above them. That is how men become untouchable. That is how legends are born. This is not about being liked. It is not about being understood. It is about being obeyed, respected, and feared. That is the essence of cold strategy. If you're ready to sharpen your mind even further, check the pinned comment for the next step. Subscribe to the Cold Strategist and hit the bell so you never miss another ruthless law of power revealed. And leave your mark below. Have you lost respect by explaining too much? Or have you seen silence command more than words ever could? Share your story, because here your words feed the strategy.